Hi, all of you. We're going to move on to the face. So the bones of the face form the interior part of the skull. And we're going to start out in order again with the maxilla. So here in green is all the region of the maxilla. Okay? Maxilla. Then rotating it, you get to the cheekbone, which is this bone that looks more white. It looks kind of like it has some leftover dark green on it. But this here, cheekbone, is the zygomatic bone. So maxilla, zygomatic. I'm going to rotate. And the nasal bone, that's an easy one. It's just, this is the only part of bone up here, right? The rest is all going to be cartilage. So in black here is the nasal bone. Now the lacrimal, look at that in red. Very nice in there. Lacrima, lagrima in Spanish means tear. So your lacrimal, right, is that bone that's in red. Good. Then we're going to look at inferior nasal concha. So to see that, it's a little tricky, but I think you can see it. So inside the nose here, this red structure, we got a big chunk of bone here inside there. Let's see if I can illuminate it better. Sort of shines a little bit in there, maybe with my phone. And it's in red there. You can see it. Very interesting why that's in there. You know, why would you have these big lumpy things inside your nose? And it's because it creates turbulence inside the nose when you breathe in. And you want that turbulence because it delays the time that it takes for that air to reach your lung, and it would reach it too cold. So by delaying it, it sort of warms up that air before it gets into your lung. It's really great. So those are the inferior then. It's one on either side, inferior nasal concha. I'm going to show you on the other side too. A little dark in there to see. Nasal concha. And then the vomer. The vomer is painted in blue here. So remember this top one was a perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. Well, down this blade on the bottom part here, close to the maxilla, is called the vomer. Okay, now let's rotate here to look at the palatine bone. So remember, in green, we had the maxilla, right? If I show you like that, this is all maxilla, and it's coming up to the roof of your mouth also. But much more posteriorly than in red here and maroon, that is going to be the palatine bone. So this up here is still maxilla. The mandible I have over here. So there's the mandible. We'll have more structures on that to show you in a little bit. And the nasal aperture. So that's pretty easy. The nasal aperture is just the entire opening that this nasal region has. That's the nasal aperture. Remember? Vomer. And then in red in there, inferior nasal concha. Now we're going to move on to what you see specifically in some of these bones. So let me just do a couple before we move on to the mandible. So the lacrimal bone, remember the one that we see in red here, has a nasolacrimal canal. So in it, I can put, there. Take it out, there's a little hole in there, the nasolacrimal canal. So think of that. It connects the nose and the eye, the lacrimal. So you know this, you cry and fluid goes from your eye down into your nose. And why is that? Because it can actually travel down the nasolacrimal canal. Okay, and in the maxilla, now that we're looking at the maxilla, there's going to be another foramen there, and that's the infraorbital foramen. Infra, below the orbit of the eye, so infraorbital foramen. Remember we had a supraorbital foramen or notch? And that's going to be above, and this one is below. Okay, let's cut it there, and then I will be moving on the next video to, you know what, let's just finish it. Because there are not many structures, let's look at the mandible. So I'll move this away, and we're going to go to the mandible. And in the mandible, this region here is the region, it's a condyle, and you know what a condyle is. You're bored with this already, right? A condyle is where it forms a joint with another bone. So that's where it's going to insert into the skull, into the mandibular foramen. So the other protrusion that we have here to name is the coronoid process. So in lateral view, easier seen. So we had the mandibular condyle and coronoid process. Coronoid process. Later, we have more foramens, more foramina. So I'm going to rotate this, and on your mentum, which is your chin, this is your mentum. On your mentum, there is yet another foramen. And this is called the mental foramen. During the regular semester, I usually have a dentist come and give a talk, and he loves talking about that because you have a nerve that he has to anesthetize, which travels here inside the bone and comes out the mental foramen. So in order to get a shot here, in order to numb your back teeth, this shot has to be way out this way, coming out this other hole. And what is that one? That is the mandibular foramen. So mandibular foramen, and it'll travel through here and out the mental foramen. Don't mix those up, because it sounds like you could call this one the mandibular, right? But this is your mentum, your chin. And then this is mandibular there. Okay, and great. We're done with that whole set now. Thanks for listening.